Hey, fellow classmates. My name's Megan Grant. Nice to meet all of you guys. So, I threw a few pictures up here to kind of help introduce myself to all of you. I've been teaching at Upper Moreland School District, which is a district just north of Philadelphia, kind of along 276. I've been there for the past 20 years, and throughout my career, I've had the privilege of working with sixth, seventh, and eighth graders in both math and science classrooms. So, for the past 3 years, I've been focusing on teaching science, which has been a very refreshing change of pace. Because prior to that, I had been in a math classroom for about 17 years. I will have to admit that I do miss teaching math. I think I might return eventually. I actually just read Joe Bowler's book in the last course that I took, and it has inspired me to kind of want to get back to the math classroom. So outside of my career, let's see. I'm married. I have two children, as you can see from the picture there. They keep me extremely busy. As any parent out there knows, we are all kind of taxi drivers, probably for our second careers, as we, shuttle our children from sports and activities after school. All very fun, but also very time consuming. So, in my limited time, I love going to the gym and working out. I'm currently training for my first Olympic triathlon, which will be in June. The training's been challenging and, rewarding. It's been fun. I also love spending time outdoors. I love skiing, hiking, kayaking, paddleboarding, camping. Although I will have to admit that as I get older, I'm preferring some cabins over tents, but I do still enjoy camping. I guess if there's a purpose, if there's like a place to hike to. What else? Traveling is another big passion of mine. Over the years, I've backpacked through a bunch of different countries, and this past summer, I had the opportunity to go with my family and take the kids on their first backpacking excursion. And we went down to Chile for a number of weeks and skied and kind of just explored all over that country, which was great. What else? When life allows, I do enjoy reading and cooking. Kind of helps recharge me, but again, not a ton of time for that right now. So that's basically me in a nutshell. I look forward to kind of meeting you guys through your videos as well. So I'll look forward to that. All right, moving along. All right, so after reading chapter 2 by Stephen Moskowitz, these two quotes kind of really stood out to me. I've never really seriously considered teaching online before, to be honest, but these quotes kind of made me stop and think. Um, Kind of encouraged me to reflect on the possibilities and recognize that online teaching could very well be the way of the future. So the first one was online learning has the ability to personalize education and become an impetus for major transformation in education. The other quote that really caught me was right at the end of I guess at the end of chapter 2, and it was as this medium continues to grow. And more institutions expand their online offerings, effective and efficient online teaching and learning skills and qualities will be important and highly valued. So, those two quotes just made me recognize that maybe it really is important to become good at this stuff, which takes me to my next slide. All right, so in chapter 2, Moskowitz talks about how prior experience with online learning is pretty critical for online teaching, which I do agree with. I think, like anything in this world, having prior experiences will definitely give us perspective and something we can draw from, whether it be positive or negative. So, as I look at my own experience as my own experiences as a student and as a teacher, I can kind of reflect on some things that he spoke about. So, from my own experience as a student, about 10 years ago, I took a few online graduate courses. And then, obviously, more recently, here at Millersville, I'm involved with the master's program that I'm doing all my courses online. And this is I guess, my fourth class. So, while the management systems, I guess, were varied, I think the overall design of the classes and communication with my peers and my professors have been fairly similar. If I were to teach in this environment, I would say that I've definitely learned valuable things through going through the process of being a student, such as how the classes are organized, different activities that are engaging, time management, how to communicate with my professors and classmates. I definitely don't feel like I would be working with a blank canvas, so I can Definitely agree that having some experience would be helpful. Uh, I also, for a short period of time, took on the role as an online teacher. Like many of you, I was thrown into that with the pandemic, and I did not feel equipped to do that well, to be honest. Through trial and error, I would say I improved slightly. I definitely experienced the time factor that Moskowitz discussed in chapter 2. I found it extremely time consuming to teach, to give feedback, to communicate with students. Sure, I was not efficient due to just my lack of prior experience. But I will say that being a teacher has given me perspective for what my professors are currently going through. But also being a student has given me perspective, for what my students most likely are going to go through during these experiences. All right. So another quote that I saw that he referred to, he said, effective online teachers work to facilitate a strong sense of community. Building a strong sense of community in online environments, I think, remains a difficult place for me personally. Having taken graduate courses in like a traditional face-to-face setting, I noticed how much easier it is to develop relationships in those environments. In online settings, I would say, despite my professor's efforts, I feel the interactions are kind of more contrived. I can appreciate the value of that like structured communication between classmates and the role it plays in keeping us motivated and engaged. But I can't say I've ever really left an online class feeling really connected to anybody. Definitely not in comparison to when I left my classrooms, where I was like in a brick and mortar and with other students. When I reflect on being a teacher and trying to build a community, I will be honest, I think I failed epically at that. Lucky for me, most of the students that I was teaching knew each other, and I was the odd man out. In the beginning of the year, I was really focused on getting to know them. So I had them each create a slide about themselves and present it to the class. I had over 100 slideshows from students, and I found it overwhelming and probably at the end, not really that productive of a use of time. Over the next few months of teaching online, I would say out of all of my students, I made a handful of relationships with them. One student was struggling at home, so she would meet with me during office hours. But overall, I think this is just a big place of concern that I have for myself, I guess, as a teacher, probably more so, but also as a student, that it's just hard to build a really strong community virtually. All right. So, looking at the skills that he deems necessary for successful online teaching, I think that they are a fairly different set of skills than face to face teaching. And if I'm being critical, try not to be overly critical of myself, I came up with a list that I think I'm strongly equipped with, or fairly, I guess we'll say fairly strongly equipped with after being in the classroom for 20 years, and definitely a list of skills that I would have to develop over time. So, content and subject area knowledge, I think I'm fairly strong with. I feel that I'm stronger in math and science since I've only been teaching science for the past 3 years. He mentioned that teachers might have to create and modify curricula. I feel fairly confident, honestly, doing this in my classroom, but I just don't know how that would carry over to the virtual instruction. As for flexibility, I do think I could be a very flexible teacher. I do think that I could work in smaller and more frequent blocks of time. I just honestly don't know if this would be a choice that I would want to do, just being that, there's a lot of obligations as a mother, after hours. And I think I'm pretty organized. I think that that would be something that would benefit me. I also think I'm very dedicated and motivated to my career, but I do think I might have a hard time with my work-life balance if I were to teach online. So places that I would have to develop is definitely communicating virtually. Moskowitz commented that online teaching requires a heightened awareness of how one communicates virtually. I definitely do not think that this is one of my strong suits. I'm definitely that friend who takes a day or two to respond to texts. So, not that I would be doing that while teaching, but I just think that I have very strong boundaries around technology. So I think that would be something I would definitely have to work upon. Writing he said that the writing was pretty intensive. I unfortunately do not find myself to be a very strong writer. I don't necessarily enjoy writing. he mentioned that, you'd be doing a lot on discussion boards, email exchanges, online advising, tutoring, feedback on assignments. I could definitely do that. I just think that I would have to get better with my writing and honestly be more efficient with it as well. The other thing I would have to develop under clear expectations and support, back to kind of what I said previously, is the ability to facilitate a strong sense of community. I don't think I did well with that last time, and that would be a skill that I would definitely have to read and read about and work upon if I were to teach in this type of setting. All right, so when I looked at the national standards for quality of online teaching, I noticed at the start of the document that they said these standards are really meant to focus for online instruction. They're not intended for blending learning approaches or for the way that we use technology in our traditional classroom settings. But in looking at all of them, I do think a lot of the standards are what's expected out of teachers in a face-to-face setting as well. I mean, obviously some are different, so I kind of broke them up as you can see on the slide here. So standard A on professional responsibilities I found to be quite similar. I think although some of the standards apply and specifically discuss digital citizenship, which teachers in the classroom I think also need to follow, I believe the overall message in these standards is that we are professionals. We need to be learning and staying attuned to the latest and greatest in our specific fields. It's important that all of us are keeping accurate records. We're carrying out our professional responsibilities. And I think overall those standards apply to, exactly what would be expected out of a teacher in a face-to-face setting. The learner engagement and diverse instruction standards I also thought were pretty similar. I think that they're carried out maybe in slightly different ways, but overall, when looking at those standards and our professional responsibilities as teachers, I think they are very much aligned. Lastly, the one on standard G on assessment and measurement, I found that to be extremely similar. I think that all teachers need to, as they said in their standards listed here, that we need to use both formative and summative assessments. We have to give constant feedback. We have to use a variety of assessments. We also need to allow students opportunities for self-assessment. And I think that pretty much these standards are the same for face-to-face and online instruction. All right, so standards that I found a little bit different. Standard B on digital pedagogy, I thought was, fairly different. The standards that they talked about for an online environment aren't as present, I would say, as in a face-to-face classroom. I think online they need to use technology to support communication, collaboration, and encourage learner interaction. And from my experience in the classroom, I don't necessarily rely on technology for these things, other than maybe students collaborating on projects. I definitely want my students interacting and building relationships, literally face-to-face, not through a computer. So I think the standard on digital citizenship and digital pedagogy is more demanding, and it requires more from a teacher on an online environment. I also found standard C, community building, is something that is crucial, I believe, for both face-to-face and online environments. But I put it here under different because I think the methods in which we fulfill these standards would vary greatly from the two environments. The standards they listed here focused on using practices that encourage collaboration, reaching and connecting culturally diverse learners, the teacher being able to reach all learners in the room and promote higher order thinking. I think these are similar for both settings, but the way in which us teachers would have to approach building these communities and these relationships are quite different. And for me, this would be the most difficult standard. I believe I work really hard at trying to create a feeling of community within my classroom, and I would find this extremely difficult to do in an online environment. I think partially it's due to a lack of knowledge and best practices for online instruction, but also I just don't personally enjoy interacting virtually with people. I'm not a huge fan of social media. I would much rather be face-to-face or talking to someone on the phone, just because I connect better with people that way. So I do think this would be a challenging way for me to have to communicate with students and, build a cultural and feeling of community, I guess, amongst them. And lastly, the standards on digital citizenship and instructional design, I think are, a little bit different in an online setting. The focus on digital learning resources is obviously emphasized within these standards, which I don't necessarily feel that in a face-to-face classroom. And also, if a teacher is creating their own curriculum, the standard along instructional design has to be followed, which I don't think is necessarily true in a face-to-face setting all the time. All right, moving along. All right, and to finish up, Archambault talked about a number of challenges with online teaching. I think all of them really spoke to me, from time to content to student issues. But I guess the one that would really be most challenging for me is the content. Both extremes that she talks about would concern me. Having very little control over the material versus creating it all on my own and working independently, having no colleagues to really bounce ideas off or collaborate with, is not what I'm used to either. She said that a teacher she interviewed said that they had no authority to change or create anything for my students. For me, I think this would lead to a lot of frustration and make me feel pretty ineffective as a teacher. I'm used to changing things from class period to class period if things aren't going well. Different students, different periods throughout the day call for different methods and activities. And I think it would be hard just to follow a cookie cutter curriculum. It also seems like the teacher's expertise might not be taken into account. And I don't want to just simply feel like a computer or a robot carrying out, a predetermined list of activities and tasks. On the other hand, teachers who develop their own courses seem to have more flexibility in their modifications, revisions, and creation of the new content. While this sounds great, the idea of creating my own course and working independently and not having a lot of interaction with colleagues, I think would be very challenging for me. All right. Thank you for listening to my probably way too long presentation. I apologize. Again, I look forward to meeting all of you guys through your videos and getting to know you throughout the course. Take care.